I feel like at this point, I'm tired of theory. Like we can have this same conversation over and over and over and over again. And, sometimes every once in a while, somebody will put a new spin on it and think about it in a new way. It's still worth talking about, but I think we're starting to hit kind of critical mass on the theory conversation. At a certain point, we got to go do something.
A few months ago, I made a video highlighting an issue I had with Urbanist YouTube. A huge one, you might say. Urbanist YouTube was obsessed with urban planning theory and best practices, but it had little to nothing to provide viewers about how to turn that knowledge into actionable steps to make them a reality where they lived beyond a passing reference or a link buried in a description box. While educational content is absolutely important to build awareness, and awareness is absolutely important to build local groups and community around these issues, my complaint wasn't that educational content existed, but rather that there seemed to be a hard boundary that Urbanist YouTube seemed to run against over and over again. While the response was overwhelmingly positive and one of agreement, one of the most common replies to my video was that the reason this activist content didn't already exist was because it was impossible to make, or at least highly improbable, because every city and jurisdiction is unique with its own issues. So many content creators retreat to telling people to read strong towns and call it a day. Change is too hard, the tools are too many, the process is too complicated. Why even bother when people are already being activated by this content, myself included? And I'm here to tell you, there's a way through. Across a growing number of interviews with elected leaders and urban enthusiasts for this new channel, it became crystal clear very quickly that there are common issues and a common language to urbanism that unifies not just the educational piece that we're already very familiar with, but the activist component too. With this channel, I hope to show you how you can engage with your city to enact the change that so many urbanist YouTubers have described, and then described again. And again, at least from an American perspective, because it's the one I have access to, for now. For this premiere episode, we're going to talk about what a city government looks like, how it functions, and how you can engage with it to get things done. Welcome to Nth City. If you're enthusiastic about urbanism or urban planning or making your city or county or place you live a better place, you're inevitably going to have to interface with your government, which is the body that plans, manages, and maintains where you live. While every city is slightly different, especially in the faces that serve it, its politics, and its policies, there are some very common traits they all share. First off, very simply, a city is born when a group of people in a geographically defined area follow state rules and ask for a city charter so that they can create a government and become an actual self-governing city. Each state is different, and different cities within each state will have different rules. It also means there will be places you can go to and even live in that you think are cities that actually aren't. They may be census-designated locations or unincorporated areas, and the Postal Service may even call them by its regional name, like Falcon or Security Widefield around here. But they aren't actually towns because they have no governments. There are pros and cons to why places become cities. If you're in a distant development or exurb on the fringes of an urban area, you may prefer to just let the next highest jurisdiction take care of stuff so you can, say, pay less in taxes. This also creates weird situations, like the fact that Colorado Springs has about 40 county enclaves inside it, meaning that anything from a strip of road to a couple of square miles may be inside the city limits of Colorado Springs, but in its own unannexed bubble that belongs to the county. Cimarron Hills is a huge slice of developed community on the east side of Colorado Springs, but if you need any services, you have to call the county, not the city. It gets really complicated really fast. The first thing to understand is who's actually inside nearly any government. The politicians at the top who create and guide policy, and the professional staff beneath them who make it happen. We're leaving the judicial out of this for simplicity. This two-tiered structure is as true of city governments as it is state governments or individual representatives and congresspeople. Even if you can't stand your elected legislator or politician, they've still got a support staff who will take your call and or try to connect you with government services and resources. Politicians are typically elected by the public, while the professional staff are picked by supervisors and deputy heads that are either chosen by the politicians or through some existing process. It's really exciting and usually pretty complicated. When people complain about the government, they're usually complaining about these guys and not these guys, who are usually just doing their jobs as best they can. Professional staff are usually credentialed workers who are educated in their specific fields, which reflects in their higher pay. Politicians, however, can be you or me or Billy around the corner who thinks that every C-store should also have a drive-thru. They can be nearly anyone who's lived in a jurisdiction long enough, has gathered enough signatures to get on the ballot, and then receives more votes than the other people running. They also usually get paid literally nothing or almost nothing, but that's a discussion for another episode. Let's focus on the city-level politicians, typically in the form of a city council, because they're the leaders of your city. Usually. This group is elected from two different regions, districts, at-large, or some combination of both. At-large candidates represent the entire city, which means you can live anywhere in the city and run for one of these offices. Larger cities will typically be divided up into districts or wards, each with unique demographics, geography, and hyper-local issues. In these districts, only residents can run for and vote for council members to represent them.
Hi, my name is Nancy Henjum. I am City Council Representative for District 5 in Colorado Springs City Council.
Nancy is my city councilor, one of 9 council members here in Colorado Springs, 6 of whom are from districts and 3 are at large. To our north, Westminster, Colorado has 7 at-large councilors.
Hi, I am Claire Carmelia, and I am currently city councilor in Westminster. But today I will be voicing my views and opinions of myself and not representing necessarily the views of Westminster as a whole.
Claire was recently elected there, and their form of government creates some interesting dynamics.
I am someone who voted in favor of creating wards last year, and that did pass. And so Westminster will be creating wards in the future, which I think is very exciting. I think that provides a bit more equity, but it also provides the councilors themselves more of a chance to answer each resident, because right now we are inundated. We all get all of the emails all of the time. And so I think that provides opportunity for gap, right? Because it's not one person that's assigned to answer you. Instead, it's all of us or none of us, if it somehow falls through the cracks. That is to say that it is my responsibility to read lots and lots of emails.
Council members will have a variety of responsibilities, from listening to constituents, to drafting and passing legislation, to attending city events after hours.
Yeah. The work-life balance it's not there at the moment, but I'm working on it. I will say it has been a lot of 16-hour days so far into this term, and I think it is a problem. And I've been trying to come up with solutions on how we can shorten the length of our meetings. Our Monday city council meetings, we need to be there at 5:30, and then they often end at midnight, or this last week it ended at 1. And then, you got to get up and get to work the next day.
What was common to all of these elected officials that I talked to, however, was the fact that they didn't have a dedicated staff to help them process their work. Unlike bigger cities or legislators at the state and federal levels, leading to long hours processing information.
Once I read the email, I want to be able to respond and try to fix the issue in whatever capacity I can. And usually that means referring it over to city staff to say, okay, this has to do with libraries. Let's go through our city manager. He will pull in the right person from libraries, and we will get your issue fixed, right?
Here in Colorado Springs, our city council also serves as the board of directors for our public utility, Colorado Springs Utilities, which requires its own complex set of learnings.
And then, of course, there was learning all about utilities, which is mind-blowing, honestly. It's a huge enterprise, and it is so critical to our city. Having reliable, affordable power, water, wastewater, and heat, gas. Oh my gosh. Like right now, how much in your office there is being powered, and you just don't think about it twice that it's available, right? Yeah. So all that's pretty important.
So let's talk about two forms of city government, council manager and council mayor. In a council manager form of city government, which most cities are in America, city council presides over a full-time city manager who manages the day-to-day operations of the city with its professional staff, which obviously varies by city. In these cities, the mayor is a city councilor who's more of an MC and city spokesperson that serves as the leader of the city council but has nearly identical power to other council members. Sometimes council members rotate in and out of the mayor role, like Chris does, where he doesn't get much of a glow up from telling people like his students that he's their mayor.
Hi, I'm Chris Roberts. I'm currently the mayor of Shoreline, Washington. In this particular year, the deputy mayor from last year, who we thought was going to be mayor, decided that she did not want to be mayor. And so then everyone was like, okay, you're next. I mention it. No one really... Someone might think it's exciting. After a couple of my dry lectures, they're like, you're just another professor.
In other cities, the mayor is elected by the people to a separate council seat from the at-large and regional council members. In Colorado Springs, this is how we did things until 2010, when voters decided to change the city charter to create a council mayor government. With this structure, the mayor became a full-time executive with a six-figure salary separate from city council. The city manager essentially became their appointed chief of staff, and the city's professional and administrative staff fell under their purview. City council still has a leader here, the president, but all the executive decisions are made by the mayor. One last distinction I'll highlight in this video is partisan versus nonpartisan races. Our county, El Paso, has partisan races in which candidates, whether commissioners or other elected positions like our coroner, appear on the ballot with their political affiliation dangling alongside their name. In the city, elections are nonpartisan, so you have to be actively curious and in research where candidates stand. Even if someone can go through the public record and find which party candidates are or aren't affiliated with, it can be very interesting to see how candidates' political views at a federal level translate into municipal ones. This is a very simplified explanation of how city and local governments work, but how do you engage them to make the place you live in a better one? Engaging your government requires two parties, you and the government. This might seem really pedantic, but your city government is probably older than you, and it probably has a full-time communications team that has spent years or decades figuring out how to tell residents what it's doing. And this is usually your way in. Start with your city's website. They probably have one. They're probably going to have your city charter on there, the document that dictates how your city is run. It's your city's constitution, basically. The website will probably have resources on how to connect with different departments, who your council members are, when their meetings are, what the agendas are, how to email them, etc.
So twice a month, our city council staff put out on the dais, here's what's coming up on the agenda. Here are the items you should know about. And then after the meeting, here's what happened. Here's how we voted. At the very least, it's just basic information. You're not reliant on reading the newspaper. You can just look and see, what are they going to be voting on? What are they hearing? What are they addressing? It could take you literally like 3 minutes every 2 weeks to just look at that and scan it and see if there's anything on there that piques my interest. And then if there is, and you see something in your neighborhood or your part of town or something that's related to something you care about, maybe it's trash service or whatever it might be, you go, I might want to know a little bit more about that. And then you could actually reach out to the staff at your city council.
You can also attend city council meetings, but you can also probably watch them at home. Here in the Springs, the information from them and for them is pretty accessible, so you can reach out to city council with your comments and concerns without having to come downtown in person.
Just had a big resolution on immigration. That's a great example of I was so proud of how people responded. Oh my gosh, we heard from over 200 people, which is a lot on that issue. Now, unfortunately, in my opinion, it didn't change the votes, but it did make a statement and people were heard. And I think that matters.
How governments communicate are constrained by voter ambition and resources. So bigger cities and therefore bigger governments are going to have more robust venues of communication than others. Colorado Springs has several, like a weekly newsletter and social media. Our municipal podcast, which comes out on a regular basis to discuss local issues or upcoming ballot items, is called Behind the Springs. We just had a sweeping rebrand a few years ago, and sometimes its guidelines are adhered to a little too strictly. Our city also has GoCOS online and as a mobile app where you can report code violations or things as simple as potholes, which pop up all the time in a city where we freeze and thaw each season. People like to complain about potholes a lot here, and for good reason considering how many decades we've let our infrastructure rot. But city streets don't have sensors in them ringing up the bat phone back at HQ. You have to tell your city they exist. And not just that. Any issues. Regardless of how big your city is or whether you're the resident of a county, you can use your jurisdiction's website to figure out a lot about what's going on, what has been going on, or allow you to access master plans outlining what will go on, maybe decades down the road. So, you engaged your city's website, followed the city or county on social media, subscribed to the newsletter, and bought the t-shirt. Now what? It may be tempting to memorize your city charter and have coffee with your city councilor every week, but Claire suggests an easy starting point. Take it easy.
I think just being present, just show up at your town hall, have no expectations, don't even worry about doing your homework. Just sit and listen and find out what is impacting residents, what are residents saying, and what are the different items that council is voting on. And then I urge you to come back, just once a month, once every other month, and then speak, because we always have public comment. We have public comment at every single city hall.
When you've got some wind beneath your wings, your city probably has boards and commissions covering a variety of city functions that need volunteer citizens to drive the direction of policy.
We have a 7-member planning commission. We have a couple of youth members on our parks board. So just sign up. Put your name in the hat if you want to get more involved directly with the city.
You are, wherever you are, your city, your county, you have boards and commissions, and you can be on them if you apply. And that's a very accessible way to get involved, because usually they cover different areas of interest, such as there's often an inclusion and diversity one. We have our environmental advisory board, which I'm on. We have these citywide boards and commissions, and you will have staff members, city staff members that attend those, and then you will have community residents that attend those, and then you will have, depending on their level of participation, counselors that attend those, right? And you've got access, if you get on those boards, to really have your voice heard at the local level, which I think is quite exciting, especially because it often covers your particular interest, and you can have a say in your particular interest. And then the city staff can take that back to whichever relevant department it might go to, let's say Parks, Rec, and Libraries. And then maybe it becomes something that comes to city council, right, to be voted on, which I think is a really great way to be involved.
And of course, you can contact your city council member directly, because they don't know what you want or think or desire until you tell them.
I think that this is most impactful because it matters so much more when a resident speaks on an issue than when I speak on an issue that a resident has not sent an email or had a public comment on, because we're not here to fix issues for me, right? We're here to fix issues for residents, and they take a higher priority. It really does matter more when a resident speaks up, and then I can follow up on it. I can ask my staff to do research. I can ask them to go back and find out, well, how much would this cost if we did what this resident proposed? And then we can do something about it, and then we can bring it to council, and then we can vote on it. And so direct action can happen from public comment. I think if more folks knew that, we might have more folks show up.
Lots of what we do comes from the community. There's a lot of individuals who raise issues, especially early on in the process, of, hey, this isn't working. It's hard for that kind of influence to occur when you're getting to 70, 80, 90% design of a project. But early on, that kind of input is very helpful.
But perhaps the most important thing you can do each and every single time it happens is vote. Here in Colorado, we've had mail-in ballots by default for over a decade, and we're arguably the gold standard for it. You register to vote, you get a ballot by mail each election automatically, you shove it back in the ballot box. Whether you do it by mail or by lining up at a voting station, be sure to vote every single time, no excuses. Just get it done. You have to. Or actually, you really, really should. Local elections are the ones that steer your city the most, not the presidential ones.
I would rather see more people vote than less people vote. I would rather see more people participate and me realizing that I'm on the wrong side of what the community wants than having just a handful of people who I know agree with what I'm thinking chime in. Because we get better policies when more people comment. But we get better projects, we get better law when that happens. Because we have a better sense of the impact of what we're doing as a council.
With all this, you have to remember that all things related to your city and to government and to people are implemented incrementally. In other words, things move really slow. It's exciting to get a buzz watching YouTubers chat about what seems like an easy fix to street design or how zoning changes can create stronger neighborhoods, but nothing happens quickly.
I mean, really fundamentally, Nick, whether it's about this or anything else that's related to change, I think for the most part, change comes incrementally. The way I think about this as a way of survival, honestly, is thinking about getting up and doing something because it's the right thing to do, not because of the outcome that I want. If I get too caught up in the outcome that I'm looking for, then I'm going to be constantly, perpetually in a cycle of hope and despair, because often my efforts don't yield in what I really want to see. And, then we get really discouraged and we get down, and then, we're back to like, okay, we've got to be hopeful again.
Your city is not one thing that has to be done. It's thousands of individual ones, and they may not be happening in your neighborhood. These things have to be sorted, prioritized, designed, and then money has to be found to make them happen. Just because some passionate bicyclists want a robust, protected bike network doesn't mean the city has money for it, or will have money for it, for a very long time, if ever. Put another way, your local government has a mass and an inertia to it, and you as a community need to work as a unified front to steer it in the direction you want it to go. That takes time, that takes energy, and it takes a hell of a lot of effort. We didn't become car-dependent cities overnight. It's something that happened over decades. Undoing it is going to take about that long too, more or less. Eventually, you may find yourself in the position that Nancy, Chris, or Claire did, where they've had enough looking in from the outside and decided to run for city leadership themselves, which is what I'm covering in our next episode.
I think that it's very difficult, again, once you learn, just like I was when I was, in my early 20s, once you learn about the issues, I think it's really hard then to not speak up on them.
It's never too late to learn. It's never too late to change your ways, and respect also, I guess, that there's different seasons in your life, like the world's not going to end if for 10 years you have no idea who your county commissioner is or your city council member is. But at some point, it's probably a good idea to clue into that stuff. What do we choose to spend our time on too? I mean, we go on social media. What do we really do there? I don't know.
You may also notice that I mentioned a unified front because I only talked about direct engagement on an individual basis. Just enough to get started, just enough to whet your appetite. Don't worry, we'll be talking with local advocacy groups with people like Nathan Bird in a future episode too. Don't think I left you guys behind. I have not exhausted all the ways that you can engage your city government or get things done in your city. I have content for years.
You get people who, they just got orange pilled and they're going to go out and they're going to go talk to their city council person and they're going to complain about Strodes and they're going to ask for bike lanes and they're just going to single-mindedly rail on whatever it is that they want to get done. But if they haven't taken the time to understand all the personalities involved and to understand all of the different local political pressures, you might end up just talking to a brick wall. So it really does help to just sit down for a little bit and be quiet and listen and spend a few weeks just trying to understand the personalities that are governing your city and understand what they care about, understand what they're worried about, understand what they're trying to accomplish in their time in office. And you might be able to find kind of a touch point where your interests overlap with their interests, and that's your door. That's your foot in the door to then start explaining okay, here's why I care about how our roads are built. And they might not agree with you, but at least you can start the conversation in a way where you're not just complaining.
Thanks for watching this episode of Nth City. If you're an elected official, professional staffer, urban planner, or just an urban enthusiast, send me an email. It's in the About profile. Heck, if you're an urbanist YouTuber, I'd like to interview you for a future episode. Come visit my Discord where we have lively discussions about everything. You can also visit my other channel, the Nth Review, where I make long-form game reviews. And don't forget, the most important part of advocacy, the most prudent and foundational of all, is that you continue